Good morning, everybody. The role of the Food Standards Agency has changed quite a bit over the 15 years that we have been in existence. So I'm hoping that I'll give you a wee bit of a flavour this morning about the things that we do and what we're concerned about. But I've also put a bit of a Northern Ireland slant on it, so I hope you don't mind me doing that. We are a UK-wide body. We're a UK government department. And we're the only government department really responsible for ensuring that food is safe to eat. But we also have another remit, and that is to protect consumers' interests in relation to food. And it was one of the first things that Tony Blair did whenever he came into power in and around the year 2000, so quite a wee while ago. And we have had all sorts of different political views in and around the Food Standards Agency since then. But we've tried to really remain true to what we were set up to do. And that really was to ensure that ingredients that are coming into the country are safe, ingredients that the animals that leave the farm are safe to be eaten, and that food obviously sold to yourselves in shops and served to you when you're eating out is safe. As I said, the Labour government set us up in the year 2000 as a very strange and different government department. We don't have a minister. Most government departments have a minister that's able to stand up in Westminster and shout and debate and tell Parliament all of the good things that his government department is doing. We don't have that, and it was very deliberately set up in a way that sets us apart from other government departments, because the Labour government thought at the time that it was very important that we didn't have that kind of political interference. So, political interests couldn't interfere with the food safety issues that we were having to deal with. So instead of a government minister, we have a board, and the board is responsible for the direction of the Food Standards Agency. And all of the people that sit on the board of the FSA are appointed to protect consumer interests in relation to food. We have a Northern Ireland board member who goes along to the board meetings, and she at the moment is Etta Campbell, who some of you might know used to be the Chief Medical Officer before Michael McBride became the Chief Medical Officer. So Etta it does a very, very good job representing Northern Ireland interests at the Food Standards Agency's board. But we are accountable to Westminster, and the way that happens is we are accountable through the Health Minister. We don't answer to the Health Minister, but he will, if required, stand up in Parliament and talk about the Food Standards Agency. And what happens in Northern Ireland is very similar. We are accountable through Edwin Poots, who's the Health Minister here, and he will stand up in Stormont in the Assembly and answer questions in relation to the Food Standards Agency on our behalf. And in fact that happened this week because we had been dealing with an illegal abattoir. I'm sure you heard it on the news in Newry, in the Newry area. And at very short notice, Edwin Poots had to stand up and answer questions about that operation within the Assembly. So we had to go up and brief him and explain to him what the issues were, and then he was equipped then to stand up and talk about it. So that's how we work politically. Now as I say, we are UK-wide. And we have offices in London. London's our headquarters, but we also have offices in Aberdeen, Cardiff, York, and importantly for us in Belfast. And we in the FSA in Northern Ireland are responsible for those issues relating to food safety, food standards, composition, labelling, and also nutrition and dietary health. And I will explain to you a wee bit later why that's different from the rest of the UK. We're very small. We only have 38 staff in Belfast, but We're very tied into the organisation across England, Scotland and Wales, so we rely on our colleagues across the UK for us all to work together. So any policies that we develop are very much UK policies that apply to the food industry across the UK. We have a few very simple basic values that have never really changed since the organisation came into being. The first and most important one is to put the consumer first. We do our business in an open and transparent way, so everything, I'm sure you'll know, we have a very good website. It's food.gov.uk, and everything goes up on that website. All of our board meetings are held in public. You can watch them live on the internet, and all of our policy making is in open session as well. And we use the best science and evidence that we can to make those very key decisions for the food industry. The other thing that we do is act independently of government, and I've explained that to you already. And what we really try to do is enforce food law fairly across the UK. So whenever we set the standards, then we also audit against those standards, and I'll cover that in a wee bit more detail later. So our responsibilities include advising ministers on food safety and food standards issues. We develop the policy and we put in place legislation if legislation is required. And we also deal with food incidents, food and feed incidents as quickly and in as proportionate a way as we can, bearing in mind that sometimes the information coming through during an incident scenario is very fast changing, so it's sometimes quite difficult to get messages out to the public not knowing all of the information at the time. So that can sometimes cause us certainly conflict with maybe the industry, and also then it puts pressure on us from a media point of view, because the media sometimes are looking for answers that we don't have. As I've said, we set the standards and we audit district councils, and we make sure that they are enforcing food safety within their activities in a fair way. One of our key partners, I suppose, is the Department of Agriculture in Northern Ireland. The Department of Agriculture has a big number of people who go out and they're on farms all the time. They're in abattoirs and they're in cutting plants, and they're also in dairies and in egg producing plants, and they are checking the standards all the time. So while we have a very small number of staff in the FSA, the Department of Agriculture officials are actually authorised by us. They carry our authorisation card and they're doing our work for us on the ground in the businesses. We're also doing a lot of work to encourage food producers and caterers to reduce the levels of fat and salt and calories in food products, and I'll talk a wee bit more about that in a while. That's the dietary health work that we do, and we provide advice, as you know, and guidance, and we also try to provide resources to help to advise consumers on diet and nutrition and food safety issues. So, as I've said, we work with the best evidence and the best science that we have available to us, and we get that science from a number of places. We have a number of our own expert advisory committees, and those committees are the leading experts in their field from across the UK, and they sit and deliberate over some very, very difficult issues around food safety and food standards, and then they give us advice, and that advice comes to the Food Standards Agency Board, and we then would turn that into policies or turn it into legislation if we need to. We are on our third strategy. The Food Standards Agency produces a 5-year strategy, so we always try to look ahead and see what challenges we'll have over a 5-year period. So our current strategy finishes in 2015, and we're already starting to think about our new strategy. What are the issues that the industry is facing? What are the issues for consumers? How are our consumers' purchasing behaviours changing, for example? So we're thinking about all of those things so that we're well informed to form our new strategy going into 2020. Now, I said I was going to put a Northern Ireland slant on this, and in Northern Ireland we work very closely with some other key government departments, and the first one is obviously the Department of Health here. And we work with the Department of Health to deliver some of their policies in relation to public health issues that are related to food and diet and nutrition. And we also work very closely with DARD. So DARD, as I say, do all that meat inspection service for us and dairy inspection service. So we work closely with our colleagues in the Department of Agriculture. So they, as I say, are out and about. They're doing their inspections. We have a big industry around fish and shellfish. So those Department of Agriculture officials are there, making sure that fish is landed in a safe way and is processed and is put onto our tables safely. And then also, obviously, Colin has covered the meat, the red meat. Also, we have poultry meat as well. So those officials are there every single time an animal is slaughtered. There is a vet on site inspecting, and there are meat inspectors there checking various things. And so every individual animal is inspected and is processed through under that control. The other big police force that we have available to us are environmental health officers, and there's an environmental health team in every district council. Those officers that are working on food control are going out and about day and daily into catering premises and retail premises, inspecting the hygiene standards and inspecting labelling and composition of foods as well, ensuring that the ingredients that are used and the foods that are produced comply with the law. So we're really grateful to the environmental health officers that are working very hard day and daily in Northern Ireland. We also work with partners in the Republic of Ireland, and it's very important for us to make sure that on the island of Ireland we have a consistency of approach to the food industry. So we work with the Food Safety Authority in Dublin, and we try to produce guidance that is acceptable to the industry, because we have a lot of live animals and food products that are moving across the border, north to south and south to north. So we need to be very careful that we're applying the same rules to the industry in the south of Ireland as well. We have the all-island body, Safe Food, that we work very closely with as well. And Safe Food's remit is around consumer education and information. So we make sure that anything that we produce with Safe Food helps to inform consumers of the work that we're doing. So a lot of the resources, for example, that we would put into schools will be joint resources with Safe Food. And that seems to work very well. We do a number of the shows as well with Safe Food, Balmoral Show, and the Food Safety Week as well. So we work quite closely with our colleagues in Safe Food. One of our, I suppose, key schemes that we have developed over the past few years is our food hygiene rating scheme, and that's probably one of the things that has changed quite a bit since I last spoke at this conference. The food hygiene rating scheme is designed to give consumers information as they walk into a business and make choices about the food that they're going to eat. The food hygiene rating scheme should be very easily spotted as you walk into a catering business, and that lets you make your own mind up whether or not you want to use that business. Whenever an environmental health officer is out inspecting a business, they're looking at how well that business is complying with food law. So they're looking at how hygienically the food is handled, how it's prepared, how it's cooked, is there reheating going on, how is it cooled and stored and presented to the customer. And then they're also looking at the condition of the building, so the cleanliness, the layout, the lighting, the ventilation and the other facilities that are available within the kitchen. But a very key thing is how the business manages the risks that they see for themselves within their own business. So what records does that business keep to make sure that the food that they produce is safe? And at the end of all of that, at the end of the inspection, the business will be given a rating from 0 to 5. And that food hygiene rating means that business has been assessed, obviously, and will remain with the business until it's next assessed. So on that particular day, how well has the business scored? So a 5 means that the business has very good hygiene standards. And if improvements need to be carried out, then the EHO will come back in again whenever the work has been done and re-rate that business. Now, one of the things that we don't have at the minute is that it's not compulsory for businesses to display the rating yet. So you will see a lot of 5s, you'll see probably a lot of 4s, but you'll not see a lot of 0s, 1s and 2s in particular. So we're taking legislation through the Assembly at the moment to make it compulsory for food businesses to display their rating, so that, you know, if you walk into a business and you don't see the food hygiene rating up on the door, it's very likely that it has a lower rating. But the only thing then that you can go to do to check is look up our website, and every single rating is displayed on our website, so you can still log on and check what the business's rating is. Certainly for the food hygiene rating scheme, young people do love to compare ratings, and it seems to be a bit of an interest for young people. We've been doing quite a bit on social media as well to try and get the message out, you know, because it is important for people to take that into consideration when they're making food choices. So the other thing that the FSA does is deal with food incidents, and these are issues that really we don't want to be dealing with at all. And if Colin and his colleagues are doing their job, and all of the things that Colin has described are happening within the food industry in Northern Ireland, we would never ever have any food incidents, which would be a lovely place to be. And then people would never hear about the Food Standards Agency, and everything would be happening in the background, and we wouldn't have to be worrying about talking to the media. So we have a number of different incidents that we would deal with. Food safety incidents are the incidents that we are most concerned about, and that's when people start to get ill because they're consuming food. And that is a place where I certainly do not want to be. We have had deaths from food poisoning in the past in Scotland and Wales, and it is very, very difficult, and just the most horrible thing to have to sit down with a mother and talk about what went wrong in a food business that resulted in the death of a child. So we try as much as we can to make sure that that doesn't happen, but from time to time the controls within food businesses do slip, and there are issues, and I'm sure you know, you'll all have heard of the biggest E. coli outbreak in Northern Ireland last year, associated with a restaurant in Belfast, and it took us a long time to work through the issues in relation to that food business, and I'm sure you'll hear more about that. That's a live investigation, and you'll hear more about that in the media. But as I say, we really want to make sure that businesses do not get to that point where we are in there trying to handle a food incident. The other one that we were dealing with last year, and everybody loves talking about it, is you know, the issue that horse meat got into the mainstream beef production system. Now, this was a very difficult incident for us to handle. There were no food safety implications. We were a bit concerned about food safety, but there were no food safety implications because of all of this horse meat was produced through those abattoirs that I have been already talking to you about, with the hygiene inspection in Europe. So the meat was coming in from Europe, where horse meat obviously is a standard meat that consumers eat. So it really, I think what happened was the offcuts of that production made its way back into the UK. And that means then that it's a food standards issue, and food standards and labelling are a bit more difficult for us to deal with, because we have to rely on the food businesses to give us the information and put information on labels that is accurate. And part of the problem is then, how do you do traceability? How do you start to look at frozen blocks of meat? How do you start to identify what is horse and what is beef? So quite a difficult incident for us to handle, and for the other authorities, the Department of Agriculture and the environmental health officers, to check up and trace through. But we have a number of powers whenever we're dealing with an incident. When unsafe food is placed on the market, it's the responsibility of a food business to make sure that that food is taken off the market, and that they tell their customers what action they should be taken if the food has been bought and is already in the home. But if the food is withdrawn, then the agency can issue a product withdrawal notice, and then environmental health officers will go out and check those businesses to make sure that that particular product has been taken off the shelves and has been removed safely and will be disposed of safely. And then we have other powers as well. We can serve, for example, emergency notices on businesses to close them down until we get to a stage where we can be confident again that they're producing safe food. But I suppose one of the biggest things, the most powerful things that we can do, is that we can publicise food safety incidents. So we can tell people directly through our own communication, through our website, and explain to people what they can do. And that's probably the most powerful weapon that the Food Standards Agency has. I've talked a wee bit about food labelling. The food labelling laws are just about to change, and there are more stringent food labelling laws coming through from Europe, and I'll just cover them for a couple of minutes if I'm okay for time. At the minute, we have food labelling regulations, and the regulations state that you have got to provide certain information on a label, and environmental health officers will go out and check food labels and talk to food businesses about how they can comply with the law. And of course this is very important, because it tells consumers things that they need to know, and it helps them to make choices about the food that they're buying. So for example, if you have a particular intolerance, or you're concerned about eating a particular food, the information should be on the label. It should be there for you to make that choice. And also then there are food safety instructions on the label as well, how to store food, and the date coding should be there as well. And I suppose the new labelling regulations will be coming through. They're trying to consolidate all of the different regulations. There's lots and lots of EU regulations on food labelling, but we're starting to think about now giving information about the origin of food, where has it come from, so that consumers again can make their choices based on the information on the label. So lots of different rules and regulations around labelling, which will be coming into force in December 2014. One of the things that will change will be on the back of pack, and up until now it has been voluntary for food businesses to put nutrition labelling on their foods, but that will become a mandatory requirement. So from now on, you should, most foods in the UK are already have nutrition labelling, but it will become law that they have to provide that information on the back of pack. And one of the things that across the EU was very keen to make sure of is that allergens are very clearly highlighted on the list of ingredients. And as you can see, there are now 14 prescribed allergens that have to be declared, and that's an awful lot of information for people that are either having allergic reactions or have an intolerance to food. It's a very difficult thing, because people, again, People can die if they don't have the information, and actually we have had a number of deaths in the last year or so because of deliberate substitution of different nuts through Chinese and Indian restaurants in England. So it is a very, very serious issue for consumers. So from these new regulations come in, the food businesses have to really highlight on their list of ingredients what are the allergens. One of the other schemes that the Food Standards Agency has really championed over the years is front of pack nutrition labelling. And we wanted to have front of pack nutrition labelling because consumers they don't have the time, they don't have the inclination to start reading the backs of packs of labels whenever they're shopping. So what we wanted was a straightforward and simple way that consumers can make decisions about different brands of products whenever they're looking at them and faced with them on a shelf. And we have introduced traffic light labelling on the front of pack. And for the very first time, we have agreement across the food industry that this information will be applied in a very consistent way, so that whenever customers are looking at the information, they know that they're looking at the same information across all the food product ranges. So we're very encouraged by that. The basic elements of a front of pack nutrition label are that the energy value will be there in kilojoules and kilocalories per 100 grams in a specified portion of the product. So there you'll see this product is 4 burgers, but it does say that 1 burger is considered to be your portion. So it gives the information based on 1 burger. And you'll see the amount of grams of fat, saturated fat, total sugars and salt in that portion of product, and it will be colour coded. And the colour coding is based on agreed rules across Europe on what is considered to be low levels, medium levels and high levels of fat, saturated fat, salt and sugar. And then as well, for the first time, it will be also compared with the reference intake for the day. Now, reference intakes are, again, a European term, but they're very directly comparable to guideline daily amounts. So instead of guideline daily amounts, we'll start to see reference intakes being used on the fronts of food packs. And that is exactly the same for a typical female: 2,000 calories a day, 70 grams of fat, 20 of saturates, 90 of sugars and 6 grams of salt. I've said that we work quite closely with the Department of Health here, and one of the things that we work on is the big strategy for obesity prevention, and that is the framework for addressing obesity until the year 2022. And the Food Standards Agency has agreed with the Department that we will lead on a number of the high-level outcomes that relate to the food industry. So we are continuing to work to encourage the food businesses in Northern Ireland to reformulate, to reduce salt, fat and sugar, to look at their promotions and how they're promoting food, and the way in which they promote food to customers, so that we get a better balance. And then also we have introduced calorie wise, which is putting calorie information in catering businesses where customers are making decisions about what they're choosing within those businesses. As you know, we have developed in the Food and Schools Forum a number of resources for schools, but just to say that we're starting to put our resources up on Aquila in one place through the fronter under Food in My School. The main resources for the GCSE curriculum is what's on a label, and that has been developed with Safe Food, and the resource is designed to help you to understand the issues around food labelling. We will be going back in and revising this resource based on the new labelling requirements, so don't worry, we'll bring it up to date for you. and then that's all the other resources that we have. But just for your information, just to find out a wee bit more, if those are the websites, the rating website, we have a lot of consumer information on NI Direct, and also you can ring into the office if you need any specific help as well, so you can give Louise a wee ring if you need anything. Thank you very much indeed.